Hi, and welcome to this episode of Silly Sapiens. Today, we're going to be talking about mental health, and I am joined by one of my dear friends, Amanda. Sit back, grab a drink, and let's go for a ride. Hi, and welcome back. Amanda, thanks so much for joining me. Amanda is a dear friend, like I said at the top of the show, and she is a New York entrepreneur, and you can catch her on...
I currently do voices on the Ollie and Moon show on the Sprout Network.
That's awesome. Actually, I saw one of them, and yes, it was adorable. It was cute, and I know that any little kid watching was amazed by your performance.
I mean, I wonder if you saw me. I'm only in the third of the episodes, but it's a super cute show. It's really, really
It is
sweet.
a super cute show. So every time we start the show, the guests I'm bringing on, I kind of ask them, what do you want to talk about? What do we want to discuss related to Homo sapiens? And you brought up mental health.
Yeah.
Which, when this show airs, I don't know when that's going to be, but probably months in the future. And at that point in time, we'll
have solved all of our problems.
Mental health will be
no more
gone.
mental health.
Done, out the window. Hopefully, maybe, we'll know where our healthcare stands at that point in time. But as we sit right now, senators are currently actually debating on it at this moment. And so when you told me about that, I thought that's so relevant to right now, not only because of the crisis we're facing in the United States with mental health issues, but because they're literally voting on that issue right now in the House. So what was your personal reason?
I want to talk about, like, I don't know, what goes on in people's brains, because, like, and their emotions, because, like, I don't know, as an actor and someone who does, you know, who works with people's psychologies, like, I think it is just really important and really fascinating. I mean, I think, you know, it underlies why people talk to one another, how people connect, like the problems that people have, what people perceive as problems that other people might not, like what's the difference, and it's all, you know, how their brains respond to stimulus, basically.
Right. It's interesting. I'm reading this Homo sapiens book right now, and he talks about, it's called Sapiens, A Brief History. Really great read. I highly recommend it.
Cool.
You will not look at yourself the same way after the book. But he talks about when our species of humans started moving into the agriculture revolution, that it completely changed for us. You know, we kind of look back as like the hunter and gatherer stage of not being like the greatest life for humans, that maybe it was really hard. They got hurt by trying to hunt these large prey, etc. But his argument is that when we switched to the agriculture revolution, it actually made it worse for humans. Humans, we actually kind of went on the decline. Depression, obviously not being quite what it is today compared to their times, but stuff like that actually came on the rise. Mental health issues, totally different issues that our bodies faced, from arthritis to, because our bodies had evolved one way. And then all of a sudden, because our brains got ahead of us and thought, maybe we can do something a little bit different to try to feed us longer, changed. Our bodies wasn't used to going out and hoeing up fields and building fences and trying to do all of these things. So it completely changed. And he argued that the lives of those Homo sapiens after that were much harder and worse off than their predecessors before.
Okay.
And why I bring this up is that I feel like we're doing it all over again. You know, he talks about Homo sapiens have this really hard time of seeing in the future. They're kind of looking right now because, you know, he says when you're looking at that, you would think, okay, why didn't they just stop? Why didn't they say, our kids are dying sooner, we're not able to live, we're getting all these diseases.
That's true, their kids were dying sooner?
Yeah. They weren't, the life expect. I know, the life expectancy dropped. They were able to have more children, but they were dying sooner. Now, because they were able to have more, we were still able to grow.
Right, okay.
Versus, although the hunter and gatherers were living longer, they weren't having that many children because they were up and going constantly. It was much more difficult. Once they got into the revolution, have more kids, so even though they're dying, we're still able to overpopulate.
Okay.
But, you know, he argues that because it's such a gradual change. It wasn't like they just went from hunter-gatherers to the very next day they had these farms and all of these things. It was a very slow process over a time. So these small issues that were happening, they weren't able to catch them in time. And by the time it became too late, they didn't remember these old ways. The whole hunter and gathering idea was gone. They were used to settle down. They had already kind of started developing their villages and all of these things that were next to wherever their plants were.
So maybe they even forgot too how life was, in the sense that like, oh, our kids weren't dying or whatever.
Yes.
So they're like, these are just our problems now.
Yes. And I think, I don't know what your thought of this, that we've kind of been doing that same thing now with technology and these new jobs and income inequality, and just add on to this list of, when we're sitting here and we're thinking about mental health, you're kind of like, why haven't humans done anything? Why haven't we've seen it, we know it's going on, we know it's getting worse, we know there's all this stimulus that's contributing to it, but why haven't we fixed it? Why can you and I go walk down the street and still see many people with mental diseases on the street?
Yeah, it's very sad. I saw someone this morning on the train. And I think it's because we don't see mental illness as, I don't think we see, humans in general, we don't see ourselves as creatures that respond to stimulus and the stimulus in our environment. We see ourselves as protagonists in our own novels or movies, basically, where we have to overcome by the force of our own will, our own personal problems, as opposed to the fact that we are creatures that live in communities. And when a community has dysfunction in it, it results in dysfunction of the people in the community in whatever way that is. And so we're really reluctant to say, these particular set of circumstances can result in people being mental illness, and people having mental illness. And we're more likely to say, well, this person's just messed up. This person doesn't know how to handle whatever it is. It's a problem of individuality. It's a problem of not being able to solve your own problems, of not being able to handle your stuff, basically. And I think it's a really unfortunate way to view mental illness, because there are certain segments of the population that will see cancer this way, but in general, we don't see cancer and biological, physical sicknesses in that same way. We say, they lived in a really polluted community. Therefore, they got cancer. They grew up in a household that smoked, and then they started smoking, and that's how they got lung cancer. Whereas opposed to, there was a saying, I think back in the day, whenever that was, that depression was a disease of the wealthy, and I think so they're linking a mental illness to a sort of type of society,
right,
and the problems that might be present in that type of society, and it sort of has to do with what you're saying. That, I mean, I'm not totally sold on this. Maybe I have to read the book, but the idea that, like, when you're not, I guess, in the ideal community for your species or whatever, that that dysfunction will crop up, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, you nailed it on the head with that's
Yes.
that stigma to that. You were able to see somebody with cancer, and we can have that empathy, and we can think well wishes towards that person, and they're not a criminal, or they're not a bad person.
They didn't do
all of these
anything
things
to get that cancer, though there are some people who will be like, well, they didn't eat well enough.
Right. There's always going to be that part of the population, right? Because here's my thought on the stigma, and I'm curious to know what yours is. Is it because, I mean, just like with gay people, or maybe even women's rights, all of these things where people tend to have this stigma or something, that it's because they're afraid of what's inside of their own selves. It's this, we all kind of have this ability, or susceptible to depression, or to other, schizophrenia. If you know somebody with that, the thought of having that amongst yourself would be terrifying. Alzheimer's, or all of these really scary diseases, addiction. And is that just that fear of that being inside of yourself and seeing it in these other people makes you realize, oh my gosh, that can happen to me, and it makes you want to stigmatize that group and make you want to set yourself apart from them.
I don't necessarily know if it's that blatant of a thought. Oh my God, that can
Right.
happen to me. That may be somewhat present, maybe in like the subconscious. I don't necessarily know that. I don't know that I see someone with a problem and I'm like, well, that's very scary because that could happen to me. But I think people in general, they just want to make themselves feel better, and they want to make themselves feel like good, strong people. I mean, I know that I do that, and I think that maybe is a tendency to want to other people who have these problems. You know, the reason why you'll shun someone who is begging for money on the street, who has an obvious mental illness. Not that all people begging for money on the street have obvious mental illness, but some people sort of do.
Yeah.
And I think the impulse to shun that person maybe doesn't come from a thought of like, that could happen to me, even though it could. It absolutely could. So much as like just a need to be like, oh, I'm better than that person. I'm not that person. I know things that this person doesn't know. I know, you know, I was able to get a job.
Right.
And it props up your own sense of self to
Yeah.
feel like you're better than that person. But like, do you have problems with anxiety? Maybe. Do you have problems with depression? Maybe. Are your relationships not the greatest? Also maybe. Like
Right.
everyone has their own struggles and their own problems. And I think we could sort of come together as a community if we're able to see, you know, schizophrenia is that person's problem, and it's not through anything that they did. It's their brain literally is like misfiring, or there's like a lack of serotonin. I'm not a doctor. I am not a doctor. But I heard maybe somewhere something like that.
It's silly Sapiens. We don't take ourselves too seriously.
I certainly don't. So I think that there is a tendency to want to like other people with mental illness. And maybe there is a sense that it is a very scary thing to confront people who are so vastly different than yourself. And it just makes you feel better to say,
Yeah.
I'm not like that.
Got some figures. 1 in 5 adults have a mental condition. 1 in 5. It says that's over 40 million Americans. That's New York and Florida combined.
I mean, I already thought everyone in New York and Florida had a mental health problem, but
True. That they didn't use the
sorry,
best.
Florida. I can only speak for New York.
They didn't use the best analogy there, but yeah, 40 million Americans, and the study went on further to say that out of those 40 million Americans, how many are actually in prisons? You know, there was a time in American history where we thought, oh no, we need to treat mental illness, to all of a sudden we switch to
Just lock them up.
Lock 'em up.
We don't need them.
lock them up. Hospital beds turned into jail cells.
Yeah, it's very sad.
And again, talking about Homo sapiens and this weird not being able to see in the future, where is everybody thinking? Money. Okay, if it's all about money, it's capitalistic society, money, money, money. We're spending so much money locking these people up. Where is there not some way we can come together like you're talking about and find a way to treat it, to find some sort of rehabilitation to make our society, I mean, it can't be great for society walking down New York and having a man peeing walking down the street coming towards you.
Yeah,
That can't,
we've all been there.
right? I mean, anybody living and everybody watching this in New York, you know what I'm talking about. You know when you get on the subway and you see somebody, like you said, not everybody that is homeless has a mental disease, but many of them do, and it becomes very obvious when they start talking to somebody who's not there, or they're pooping on the ground in front of you. That's not a normal human behavior in our society. So you would think, wouldn't it be for America's betterment or New York's betterment to try to come up with a solution that's not as costly as locking somebody up? Not even to mention the person that's there that we're doing this to.
Of course, and not even just that, but it's more costly to, from what I understand, somebody throw some statistics at me, but from what I understand, it's actually more costly to have these people on the streets, and then when they do have some sort of mental health episode or an incident and they have to go to the emergency room, it costs us, the taxpayers, more money. as opposed to, and I think it's in Colorado, and I'm not nearly so well researched as dear Chaz here, but I think it was in Colorado. They had a program where they just bought apartments for the homeless. They just bought apartments for them, and they were like, let's see how this does. And it was cheaper.
Right.
It was cheaper to house these people and have them safe from the elements and exacerbating, you know, that would otherwise exacerbate these problems that they're having, or even just physical problems, just being open to the elements and open to the cold or whatever. It was cheaper to put them in apartments rather than to have them stay outside and get sick and have to go to the hospital, or injured and have to go to the hospital. And it's like, why don't we just take care of people? It seems crazy.
Yeah, like talk about mental illness. It seems mental that we have not come up. You know, we're living the 21st century, the year 2017, and issues that have plagued humanity for millennia, we still cannot figure out. And it's mind-boggling that you think, you're a very intelligent person. I'm okay. There's other intelligent people out there. Can we not come together? But it all gets tied up politically, as you had mentioned earlier. And it comes down to legislation and healthcare being one of the biggest things. If somebody doesn't have access to healthcare, if they can't go see a professional, you know, we both stated we're not doctors, we can talk about this all day long, but when it comes to treating it or real solutions, it's going to be people in the medical community that can solve it. Yeah. And when we have 40 million Americans, and of that 40 million Americans, a large portion don't have access to health insurance. And again, that's depending on your state by state. There's this, in the same study, it rates healthcare and how accessible it is to people within these states. If you had to guess where New York fell, where would you guess?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I would guess maybe it would be in like the top, I would guess in the top third. So of like 50 states, I don't do math, guys.
19, number 19.
I'm going to say that's the top third, sure.
Sure, number 19.
No, it's maybe a little less. Anyway.
Amanda and I are originally from Texas. You can see she's supporting Texas, and dear Texas.
Dear Texas.
If you had to guess where Texas fell on the map.
No, it's like so far down, isn't it?
46.
Oh my God.
46. So 46 Texas, 47 Georgia, 48 Tennessee, 49 Mississippi, 50 Alabama, 51 Nevada. I was really surprised about Nevada.
Actually, yeah.
But the correlation, those places actually have the most people in prison. Weird how that works, right?
Yeah, I know Mississippi, I believe, is the poorest state in the union. And so I think poverty actually, you know, leads to poor mental health. People who grow up in poverty have PTSD frequently, and you know they're slower to learn and develop generally. That's not to speak for everyone, but I have read articles, and it's a shame that people who grow up in poverty in poor states like Mississippi have less access to things, because how is anyone expected to succeed? And again, I think it goes back to this idea where like you were born and you were the protagonist in your own novel, and you have to succeed against all the elements, and nobody can help you, and you have to be the one to like, I don't know, make your own life. But it's like we are a community, are we not? Like we are the United States of America, not to get too like about it.
No, you know, our underlying theme of all of these shows are e pluribus unum, out of many one.
We're all created equal.
Yeah, if this experiment of the United States is ever supposed to succeed,
we need to support each other.
There's just no way around it.
We can stop the episode there. I think we've reached a conclusion.
We know the answer. We know how to go forward. I mean, it sounds so easy, and so many people, we're not the first to think of that.
And I think we all know someone, too, that has problems. So it should be like
personal.
It should be personal. And I think we will continually come up with excuses for why this or that person is unworthy of help or unworthy, and it's because of something they've done or some way that they've behaved, when instead we think if we give them a chance, if we try to help them, they might, I don't know, prove us wrong.
Yeah.
You know?
And what it's so sad about it is, you know, mental health is this huge issue. We're kind of jumping around on all these issues, from depression to Alzheimer's to schizophrenia but in so many of those cases of just depression alone, people died. People killed themselves. Like, this is a serious, serious thing. 2 episodes ago, I did it on, gay pride, and I talked about my own story. And another thing in the news right now is transgender people in the military. And there's so many factors that can play a role into depression. And it doesn't help. It doesn't help when we have this rhetoric coming from the top down and we make it all political. We're making it all, and people are just sitting back, watching the media, and their lives are being politicized. When we're talking about health insurance or we're talking about any of this stuff, people are just sitting there watching, am I going to have health insurance? Am I not going to have? And it's just adding to this underlying problem that they're already experiencing. And we know in the United States, if we were just to leave Brooklyn right here and drive out to Long Island, there's pockets of all across this country, not just Long Island, of an epidemic of people dying in mass numbers because of drug overdose. And before the show, we were kind of talking about this and talking about when people lose their sense of purpose, when people lose their sense of community, all of these things, it plays a huge role into this. They're going to need something to fill that void, poverty, just as you talked about, growing up in a life of poverty. It's not easy being poor, and there's study after study to back that. Again, when it gets politicized, it becomes just a talking point. The people in that situation, all the lives that get lost, all the lives in the moment, we kind of just breeze over it, and it just becomes a law that we're trying to pass, or it becomes, just talking heads, and we forget the lives that are on the line, the other Americans that have just a right to what we say, the pursuit of happiness, as you do.
Totally.
But we're losing it. We're losing it with our divide in our country. We're losing it with politicizing it.
And you were talking about opioids, and you mentioned suicides as well. I remember just a couple of things that I've learned recently. When we talk about gun violence as well in the United States, we frequently think about people shooting each other in the inner cities or whatever people think about. 2/3 of gun deaths are suicides. Which that blew my mind because it is always framed as someone who is shooting another person.
Right.
But it's not. It is people shooting themselves.
And it's a huge problem in America right now.
It's an incredibly huge problem. And drug overdoses, the amount of drug overdoses we're seeing right now is larger than the number of gun deaths, is larger than the number of car accidents.
Gun deaths are huge. It's like one of the
and car
top
accidents
car
are
accidents.
huge. So it's these symptoms of desperation in our society, and we're unwilling to even address them, and we're unwilling to give these people health care even. And yet, the rhetoric is that we want our nation to succeed. We make America great again, America first or whatever. And it's like, well, what are we actually doing to invest in our communities to make America great?
Right.
We're just letting people kill themselves or die of drug overdoses. And it's incredibly depressing when you see these things happening, and I don't know, I was raised to want to help people.
Right.
And you see the people who are in power, who are able to have the capabilities to help communities not do so because of ideology.
Now, relating all that in, these are, again, facts can come out, the truth can come out. It's murky, but we can find it. Now, the solutions and all of these things may be hard, but at the end of the day, the American people actually are on the sides of science. They are actually on the side of facts. Even though I know we're seeing this small population of Americans who are completely immune to it, that's this new challenge that we're all going to have to face, and it does play a huge role in everything, including what we're talking about right now. But the major portions of America do believe they want to fix this. They do believe they want to reform our criminal justice system. The thing is, politics are not showing that. The politicians who have been elected are not showing that. This is not Chaz saying this. I mean, I wish I could just come on and make up BS like Alec Jones, and it could be, Chaz saying this.
I'll do it for you.
Yeah, But this is PolitiFact. This is factcheck.org. This is
liberal biased organizations.
This is many people have done their due diligence, and what's happening is money is what's talking. Money is what is creating this divide. These issues we're talking about, we're sitting here and we're saying, how can we not solve it? But when we start really tracing it back and we try to find what the reason is, I challenge you, see if you're politicians, see who is paying them. And so many times you will see the prison industrial complex has a huge, huge, huge investment into our political system. And all of those constituents are supposed to be representing, ignored.
And, well, right now, Betsy DeVos, our Secretary of Education, her brother, I believe, Eric Prince, is the head of Blackwater, I believe, which is like one of the, this could totally be bullshit. No, it's just not the right name, maybe, but it's like one of the biggest private prison corporations, like in the United States. And so he, he doesn't have a governmental position, but he has influence on governmental positions.
And how much money they've donated. I mean, that's, when we first started all of this, we were talking about how did Betsy DeVos get this job? And then they started digging into the amount of money that they have donated. And again, I don't want to be one of those. I'm not trying to, like Amanda was joking about a while ago, be one of those liberal, we're anti-capitalist. And no, that's not. Money makes the world go round. I get all of that. I'm not trying to be Armageddon or any of that stuff. But if you do a little bit of research, you will quickly begin to see, oh no, Chaz wasn't BSing us. It's there. It's this. They started the show and we said, why can't we fix the issue? It's there. We've put a man on the moon. We've done so much. We have the capability of solving this issue. I'm not saying it's easy and we can do it tomorrow.
But again, that's like the triumph of the individual man. Like that's people triumphing over like adversity. And it's like I think it's like if you have a mental illness, people already see you as having lost. You've already lost the game of life. There is nowhere for you to go from there. And we don't believe in the capabilities of people with mental illness. We don't believe that they can triumph. When frequently they're our greatest writers, poets, musicians, these people who are able to overcome their adversity and channel their feelings into some of the greatest art that the world has ever created. And then we say, oh, look at them, they triumphed, as opposed to investing in these people and helping lift them up.
Right. On that note, our time has come to end Silly Sapiens. Amanda, that was a great conversation.
Thank you.
I'm sure it could go on forever, and we kind of just skimmed the surface of...
we did. We only
mental. It's such a big, but this is...
I think we solved the problem,
we solved
personally.
It. Money. Get money out of politics. But, we can continue this another time. I can always have you back on, and it's something that we can give you more facts and figures through Twitter, any of that stuff. Feel free to follow us at Silly Sapiens. Amanda, would you like to plug your Twitter or Instagram or any of that fun stuff? You don't have to.
No. Well, on Twitter, I'm Amanda Barr, B-A-A-R. I retweet a lot of people who are smarter than me.
Don't we all? Thank you guys so much for joining. I'd like to thank my guest, Amanda, again.
Thank you, Chaz.
You're very welcome. And to all of you guys, goodbye.